Okay. Assalamualaikum, greetings and a very good day to all attendees today. So welcome to the first round of English debate competition, InterVarsity Science E-Debate Challenge 2021. The motion for this debate is in light of the short film Save Ralph, the House regret the use of animals in scientific research. I will be the chairperson and the timekeeper for room 5. So let me now introduce the debaters to you. So acting as the government team is the team from Sunway with Ms. Wen Jun as the Prime Minister, Ms. Shireen as the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Gitanjali as the Government Whip. Opposition team for this debate is the team from Let's Yamcha with Ms. Diva as the leader of Ms. Yap as the leader of opposition team, Ms. Diva as leader of opposition teams, Ms. Yap as the deputy leader of opposition teams, and Ms. Ili as the opposition whip. Our panel of adjudicators consists of Mr. Matthew and Ms. Aisha. So before we begin, I will briefly explain the rules. So sensitive issues are related to religion, racism, and touching a person's personality are prohibited. The use of Quranic verses and hadiths to strengthen arguments is strictly prohibited. Each debater may speak for 7 minutes. The reply speech is for 4 minutes. Time will begin to count as the debaters begin to speak. So the bell will rung once at the end of the first minute to indicate that the POI is allowed. And then at the third minute of reply speech time, the bell will rung once. In the fourth minute, the bell will rung twice to indicate that the time for the reply speech has ended. So while the debater is speaking, the opposition team can apply POIs in the form of question, statement, facts, explanation, and corrections. The opposition team are allowed to turn the microphone on or raise hands and papers to alert the speakers for POIs. No POIs are allowed during the reply speech session. If the debater loses internet connection during the debate, the debaters are given 10 minutes to return to the debate session. When the debater successfully returns to the debate session, the debater can continue the debate where they stop and there are no deduction of marks. If the debater is unable to enter the room after 10 minutes, the next debater from the opposition team will continue the debate session. So debaters are reminded to ensure the internet access is available and in good conditions for the smooth running of the debate session. Victory will be awarded to the teams that gets a majority vote from the panel of adjudicators. The decision of the panels of adjudicators is final. So now we come to our debate today. To open the case from the government team, I would like to call upon the Prime Minister to start the debate session.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So on the motion, in light of the short film Save Ralph, we as the government would regret the use of animals in scientific research. So what does it mean when we talk about the use of animals in scientific research? The use of animals basically includes all usage in the scientific industry, whether it's testing for medication, using animals to test drugs, putting chemicals into them, dissection, or things like stem cell testing, and so on. So, all right, so before that, I would like to give you a bit of background about what Save Ralph is. So there's a documentary about animal testing and animal cruelty, and what distinguishes it from all other films about, animal cruelty is how it's told not from the perspective of a human working the job of torturing these animals or who's seen animals being tortured, but in the perspective of the animal itself. So Ralph in this show is basically a rabbit who continues every day of his life saying that he goes to work, in which his career is technically a lab rat for scientists. So he's seen with many injuries such as burn marks, scars, and blindness, and very serious injuries that many of us as humans would not be able to live going through these injuries. But he continues to deal with all these injuries as his daily routine and what he calls as going to work. So just to provide you with a little bit of background of what today's world looks like. So there are sure progressive movements taking place where, you know, people are more aware about animal cruelty and, for example, like the rise of vegans and them not wanting to use animal products. But we have to realize that animal cruelty and testing animals usually go unnoticed and swept under the rug very easily. For example, unless you're a scientist working in that field, you wouldn't come across seeing these situations yourself. A regular shopper at a makeup store who uses animals for cosmetic testing, they wouldn't notice a thing or feel a thing when they buy products, because usually these things go unnoticed, and this kind of abuse is perpetuated because of such. So Save Ralph has opened the eyes of many. For example, through like the public response has been like making petitions against certain regulations that make it compulsory for animal testing. But with this film now, we believe that we as the government would regard the prevalence of animals in scientific research because it usually goes unnoticed, as mentioned before, in today's world. And we want to basically reduce it or eliminate as a whole. So now on to my arguments about why is using these animals in scientific research a bad thing. So my first argument is about how it's ethically immoral to do so. First of all, animal testing involves like injecting chemicals into animals to see how well they handle it, for example, or exposing them to possibly what is fatal diseases just to see if a cure works on humans, for use on humans. And most of the times, these kind of practices kill the animals, if not leave them in a very disabled condition. And another example is putting cosmetics on their skin to see if there are any side effects like burns and whatnot. And basically, what animal testing is doing is basically torturing these animals alive. So, so my first point about why it's very ethically immoral to carry practices such as animal testing is because first of all, there's no way animal testing could be safe. No matter what way you try to do animal testing, opposition might come out and tell you there might be animal testing that's safe for the animal, but there is indeed no method that would be safe for these animals. In any way that you do animal testing, it would harm animals. In the worst extent, it will kill them, which is often more than not is the case in today's society. And in the rare case that they don't get tortured to death, introducing something new into the system usually changes their bodies for the worse for their whole lives and leaves them with a lot of disabilities that they cannot survive with if they're released. And even in sorry, I'll reject for now. So even if in opposition's best case, where not one hair of the animal is touched and the animal is very intact, it's impossible in the first place. But if this is true, separating animals from their populations themselves and taking them out from where they're supposed to belong is essentially just as harmful to their mental health of these animals. For example, we know that recent studies have shown that animals do indeed have feelings, even animals like fish. And that's why a lot of animals, they bond with their mothers and they stay in groups instead of solo. And being taken out of their population harms animals in the first place. My second argument about why it's morally wrong to test on animals is that it's technically an infringement on another sentient being. We know that animal can feel pain, whether it's physical pain or mental pain. We know that they have emotions, and many recent scientific research has proven that. So it's pure evil knowing that these animals are just like we are, who can feel emotional or physical pain, but we still put them into these kind of conditions. For example, this is also shown with animals in zoos. They can develop pain and mental pain. They develop depression such as zoochosis for animals in zoos. They lose their sense of self and their mental health deteriorates very much, and these animals live much shorter lifespans than they are originally predicted and supposed to live without our influence and taking them under these conditions. So why are we still in today's progressive society inflicting pain on those who can very well feel them, and knowing that these animals can feel the pain, but we still do so? So another one of my argument about why we shouldn't, why it's ethically immoral to put animals under these conditions is that animals are part of our ecosystem as well. They form equal part, if not a bigger part of the ecosystem. Us, animals, and nature and plants, we need each other to live together. In a world without animals, humans technically cannot live. In fact, we've taken so much from animals. All our resources are taken from them. For example, deforestation and cutting down trees to build land, to grow food for ourselves and whatnot. And much of the time, sorry, my timer. Okay. And we also do things, for example, destroy the habitats through pollution of waterways and dumping chemicals because it's much more convenient for us. We've done so many things to animals, for example, breed them and kill them for food or whatnot. And we rely on them, and it's the fact that we rely on them to keep their ecosystem going. But we've taken way too many things from them, for example, habitats and whatnot. And we know that without animals, we can't survive. But without us, animals still can survive. So we know that animals play a very important part in our ecosystem, and therefore it's very immoral to inflict harm on them. So in an alternative world, a world without animal trials, what we would have is maybe human trials, but we in a world, for example, right now, even animal testing doesn't yield 100% results since animals react differently to how humans do in the real world. And also in the world right now with our current technological advancements and simulations, we would be able to have a better world than animal testing. And with that, I'm proud to propose.
So, okay, sorry for the inconveniences just now. So, thank you for the speech. So, to open the case from the opposition team, I call upon the leader of opposition to continue the debate session.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Animals from tiny fruit flies to mice to chimpanzees had been used widely for scientific researches throughout decades. And throughout decades, these testings had been crucial in developing science as we know it. Under our purview, we believe that removing animal completely from the structure of the scientific researches that we have in our modern science will completely impede the progress that we have, especially since we don't have any known, adequate, and feasible alternative yet. However, what we believe in today's debate is that as side opposition, we believe that scientific researches done on animals are still justified, and we will provide you several arguments to say why it is still justified. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good day I bid to everyone. To give you further insight, we do realize that animal rights do exist, but the stance that side opposition believes in today's debate is that animal rights it believes that it requires us to recognize the uncertainty that lies ahead, especially in the field of medical science. Let's take COVID-19 as an example. We did not expect it to happen suddenly, and yet here we are stuck in a never-ending pandemic for almost 2 years. Nevertheless, thanks to the researches done on through animal testings, we have managed to produce vaccines within a very short period of time. Ladies and gentlemen, let us move on to some of the rebuttals that I would like to provide in today's debate after hearing from the Prime Minister's speech. So firstly, the Prime Minister did say that on a general sense that animal testing is ethically immoral. Yes, we do understand that there are several procedures which might seem cruel and inhumane which has been carried out on the animals, but then to totally stop animal testing would also be unethical, as it would dramatically obstruct our progress in developing new treatments, especially in terms of providing new treatments for those who are chronically ill, for example, cancer patients and HIV patients. As you can see, throughout the years, animal testings has been done, especially on mice, to provide more progress on how we actually cure cancer. So it is important for us to understand that in balancing the weight of whether we want to carry out animal testing on how we want to carry out the survivability of human being, we have to take into consideration that we need to prioritize the survival of our humanity or our species first before we take into the consideration of the pain and also the suffering that might occur upon the animals during animal testings. But however, even if there are suffering and pain that has been that the animals are undergoing through animal testings, we do believe that there are several procedures taken by various professionals and scientists in order for them to ensure that these animals don't suffer as much as what side government has been indicating. So it is important for us to understand that painkillers and anesthetics to ensure that the pain has been mitigated, so to ensure that they don't actually undergo whatever depression and mental instability that they might procure through the procedures that they are being put through. And other than that, we also have various legal framework to ensure that animal testings are ethical. For example, under the Animals Act 1986, which has been legislated in the United Kingdom, any researchers which requires animal testing must be fully assessed in terms of the harm that it produces on the animal. And this assessment requires for the scientists to provide detailed examination of the standard operating procedures that has been carried out on the animals, and also the type and also the number of animals that were used in these animal testings. So with that, I hope that the whole issue of how it is ethically immoral has been broken down, and I believe that this is why we should prioritize the survival of human being first before we look at what are the rising issues coming from the cruelty that has been forced upon animals. Other than that, let me move on to the argument that I would like to provide in today's debate, is that without animals, we can't actually produce immediate results in determining the progress of the scientific research, especially in the field of medical science. Why is that so? Animals have a huge similarity, especially in terms of its body composition in comparison to a human being. An example of that is that chimpanzees are 99% similar in its body structure and its DNA structure to a human being. By testing on them, we are able to obtain more reliable data to further our research before we proceed to carry out clinical trials on human beings. Other than that, throughout the centuries, we have been carrying out scientific testings on animals to prove that these drugs or these treatments are safe for human usage. Many would still argue that, as what the Prime Minister said before, that she was uncertain that how animal testing might produce reliable result, because there are undesirable events that happen in the past which might show that these drugs are actually not safe for the usage of humans. So why are we actually testing them on animals? The thing is, if you know that if you do know that these treatments are unsafe for animal, and they are uncertain in a way that they might carry out so much pain, how would you still knowingly carry out these clinical trials on human being, as provided by the alternative mentioned by the Prime Minister, when she said that rather than just testing it on animals, why not we just test it on human being? This is something very unfeasible, because as compared to animals, human beings possess more rights in terms of, we have legal rights, we have other sorts of rights that must be cleared up before we are able to straight away go to conducting clinical trials on human being. Which is why there is so many standard operating procedures which require scientists to first test on animals. As for example, for the COVID-19 vaccines for Pfizer and Moderna, they had to go through rounds of clinical trials on animals itself before they proceed to produce the vaccines for human being. And before that, they also, yes, of course, they did conduct clinical trials on human being, but it doesn't occur until they have carried out animal testings. So with that, I believe that animal testings is still justified in order for us to properly progress the development that we have right now, especially in the field of medical science. And I believe that animal testings is still justified until we are able to obtain a proper and feasible alternative which can replace animal testing in the future. But I don't think that will happen anywhere soon. So which is why I would like to proudly oppose to this motion.
I'm sorry. Okay, I would like to thank to the speaker for the speech. To continue our debate today, I would like to call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the case for their side.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I've got a bit of internet issues right now. Is it okay if I keep my camera off?
I think so.
Yes, that should be all right.
All right, thanks so much. Give me a minute. Let me just get my timer. All right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the flaw or the outlook of the opposition case is that they rest on the assumption that human life is somehow more sacred or in and of itself more valuable than animal life, and that because of that reason we have some kind of ethical high ground to exploit animals for our benefit. I'm going to talk to you in my speech about how that's fundamentally not true, and how the prevalent use of animals in research and also in industry and animal testing in general contributes to the desensitization of humans to animal welfare, which is all in all harmful to the welfare of animals altogether. But let's first talk about responses to the leader of opposition. And I've got 3 key things I want to say against him. The first thing he talked to us about was that animal testing is imperative for scientific progress because of all of the tests and experiments we can do on animals instead of humans. And he asked us to give us give an alternative to what other kinds of methods we can use instead of that. 3 responses. Number 1, in the modern day, simulations do exist where we can just use computers to test out whether or not these chemicals or whatever product we want to put into the market are going to be safe for human consumption, which means we curb all of these harms about them being damaging to humans anyway, because we can simply feed it into a computer and have that tell us through an algorithm whether it's safe or not. But secondly, under his own paradigm, human trials are still necessary before these products are even gotten into the market, because even in the COVID-19 vaccination trials, before these vaccines could be even given to normal people on the ground, they have to go through clinical trials on humans first, which means that fundamentally, if we're able to get rid of the intermediate link of animal testing, the final product of vaccines going out to the public would be the same anyway, because the final hurdle along the way is still human trials. So we don't see why, with the existence of alternatives of simulation and human trials still being the end of that road, why animal testing still has to be the intermediate. The second thing I want to talk about is how he ignored the entire industry that is reliant on cosmetic testing and animal testing to get these cosmetic products out there. If the only case that they want to talk to us about how it's imperative to scientific progress, they also have to talk to us about how that use of animals in scientific research also condones the use of those animal testing methods in other industries as well. But I'll talk more on that a little bit later. Second response, he talked to us about how regulations are in place so that we can somehow reduce the harm done to animals, but recognize that even in the most idealistic scenario where we abide by these regulations, the end product of those regulative policies is still some kind of treatment or modification to the animal that can in fact maybe lead to death or harm. But even in the best case scenario where we give them the most optimistic, opportunistic world where absolutely no harm comes to the animal, we say that ethically speaking, we still take the high ground, because the whole mechanism that they're championing for does not take into account that these animals cannot consent to the trials that they're being put through. The final premise of the opposition case is that human life matters more than animal life. We tell you that's a fundamental thing we reject because of 3 reasons. Number 1, animals and humans form part of the ecosystem, and we have to coexist on Earth, which means that fundamentally, in like a natural sense, there is no fundamental difference between how humans and animals operate in the ecosystem. Secondly, and this is what my Prime Minister talked about, animals are in fact sentient. The only difference is they have a different level of sentience to humans. That does not mean they can't feel pain or can't feel emotion. It's just that they feel it to a different degree and dimension to what humans are used to. Final reason is that just because humans tend to be of a higher intelligence or a higher consciousness does not automatically mean we are worth more than animals, because the same logic applies to 2 people of different IQ. If they want to talk to us about how people who are smarter or humans being smarter than animals means we're worth more in terms of our value of life, that also applies logically to 2 people, one having a higher IQ, having more value than the other. So we don't think that's a logical premise that they can defend on opposition. I'm going to answer 3 questions in my speech today. Number 1, how does the use of animal testing in research contribute to the desensitization of humans to animal welfare? This is because, as my Prime Minister has told you, abuse happens behind closed doors, which means that people are at the very least aware of animal testing, but not directly exposed to the harms that are happening behind closed doors because of the way industries and companies do not want these practices to be exposed in the limelight. Which means at the very least, when people buy products that are sanctioned by scientific research, or even if they don't buy products, but at the very least scientific research is being published, they are somehow still complicit in that activity simply because they allow it to happen when they're not when they're not aware of the severity of the issue behind closed doors. It's only when films like Save Ralph come to publication that the issue is actually brought to light and people truly get an idea of what happens behind closed doors. But even after Save Ralph happened and after the backlash against animal testing, not much changed, as people still have the ingrained idea of animal testing being integral or necessary. This is the exact same logic that the LO wanted to talk to us about how animal testing is necessary for human benefit. Industries and companies championing the idea for human life being more important and more valuable than that of humans is precisely the kind of logic that continues to allow this animal abuse to continue to happen, because there's an emotional disconnect between people and these animal welfare, because we continue to believe that animals exist purely for our benefit and purely for our subjugation. What are the harms of this then? That's the second question. Number 1, it perpetuates mass industries built on the exploitation of animals. This looks like fur, leather, and skin industries profiting off of skinning animals and furring them and selling them as products for humans, and large-scale meat and dairy industries that often have unethical and harmful practices that have to fulfill the demand of meat and dairy of the public. This is the exact reason why animals' rights groups, it's hard for them to gain traction distraction because there's a disconnect between people and the true nature of the true nature of animal welfare, because we continue to believe that animals should be something that we exploit for our own benefit instead of being another equal partner in the ecosystem. How is our alternative better? A world without widespread animal testing would remedy all of that desensitization as the exploitation of animals becomes less normalized. When we live in a world where we agree and we acknowledge the fact that animal testing doesn't happen, give me a minute, when we exist in a world where exploitation doesn't happen and we acknowledge the fact that we can exist and we can hold on to products without having to exploit animals for it, it's far more likely for us to no longer see animals as mere assets, but also see them as other living organisms that have equal standing with us. But I'll take your POI now.
Okay, so according to your speech, you've stated there's a lot of reasons why the humans use animal testing, and it's purely what you're trying to say is for the benefit of humans only. But how are you to state this when some animal testings are also for the benefits of the animals? Please clarify.
Yeah, okay, so similar reasons. The alternative still exists for us to be able to figure out medicines that we can use on animals without having to directly harm those animals. Like I've told you before, we have simulations and modern day algorithms that can come up with new drugs and therapeutics for animals, and I don't see how that case holds any leverage against your side anyway. But the second reason why our alternative is better is that in the absolute least likely case where we don't get the increased empathy towards animals, we still avoid causing direct harm to animals because we outright don't want animal testing altogether. But in the very generous case where we take opposition at their best, at the very least, what you get exclusively on government bench is the preservation of the consent of these animals, because we acknowledge the fact that these animals have a right to exist and should not simply be on earth for the sake of our exploitation and benefit. What is the comparative? At the very least, the safety of the products is still achieved under our side because alternatives of simulations and safe human trials still exist, like I've told you about. But the exclusive benefit you get from government bench is that the preservation of the virtue of animals by respecting their right to exist and not be subjugated to exploitation just for human benefit. For all those reasons, propose.
All right. So thank you for this speech. Okay, wait, yeah. All right, thank you for this speech. All right. So I would like to call the leader of opposition to continue the case for their side.
I also unavailable to turn on my cam because due to my internet connections, and then I will prefer my POI by unmute yourself. Give me a second. Okay. 3, 2, 1. I will first start with the rebuttal to the Deputy Prime Minister. Firstly, when the Deputy Prime Minister insists on using the supercomputer to replace the animal testing, well, in fact, that the computer models are still unreliable because it's just inputting data and produce the consequences. That's not similar to the biological testing. And biological testing is to take into the consideration of all the unexpected biological factors. And then, secondly, when the Deputy Prime Minister talking about the human trial will be still be used, it is true that even according to the law, that law is stated that before every human being trials, it must be animal trials preceding it, because it is undeniable that there will be a side effect, or that will be harmful, that will be causing deaths to the animal testing. So when that's going to import into the human being, it would be likely that cause the more greatest harm to the not only to the itself and to family, to society, where the workforce is gradually decreased. And then the second thing, the third thing is that regard to the same equal ethicals, as what the POI stated, that this is also for the benefit of the animals, and this will be elaborated in my third argument in concerning the rabies. Like the thing is going to go benefit back to the animals themselves, and in their best case scenario, the thing is going to be constant if they are going to use the human being trial, which is not more accessible, and where the supercomputer is not so reliable. And regarding the Prime Minister arguments on destroying environmental, in fact, the mice, the animals testing you is not directly taken from the forest or from the sea, from the anything. Is what is cultural, reproductive in the lab themselves. So after that, I'm moving on to my first arguments, which is there's no feasible alternative to testing on a living or consider the whole body system. So I'm first going to tell why what animal is used for the testing and why other alternatives didn't work. And the crucial part is about their short lifespan of the animals, which can affect and great contribution to the scientific research. And then lastly, I will talk about why it is less evil to the humans. So moving on, why we use the animals, because they are biologically and genetically similar to human being. For example, their organs, their heart, their kidney, their lung is same with us. So their bursting, their nervous system is like when we are going to like perform the Maxon drug test on the animals, then we can evaluate the accurate Maxon effects. And this is cannot be replaced by any other alternatives when the human beings and animals are extremely complex already. So, and when you studying like alternative like study cell culture or study the tissue culture, this in fact cannot like treating the disease like high blood pressure or like simulate the working of the nervous system. And more essentially about the supercomputer themselves, this algorithm is normally doesn't work when it's going to study the working of the nervous system, where the people brain is consists of like 100 billion of the nerve. So for now assisting technology, we view it like it's unreliable and never be working. So I'm going on for the life. Why we using the animals? Because animal can have a shorter lifespan. For example, mouse can survive for the 2 or 3 years. It's suitable for the scientific research like the taking cancer research. And when are going to use a long-term cancer research on the human being is quite impossible, as the human have to like move over here, and there's many other side issues were happening on the human instead of the animals, and the animals can have a more and the animals can have the more scrutinizing into the animals themselves in the system, because they are living in the constant environments provided by the labs. And why I'm going to say this will be less evil to the humans. First thing, because it's undeniable. Okay, so it's undeniable that there's a risk and the side impact. So when it's happening on the humans themselves, it will cause like totally unethical, even for the human volunteers themselves. So this is like they are more engaging in another way in more circumstances, and then the humans it will likely to cause the whole scientific going to be illegal. Why I say so? Because due to the lack of the testing subject. For example, when the company is going to like testing on the humans for the new invented drugs, and then for these cases, there are companies, when they are lacking of the human volunteer, they are going to like perform the human trafficking, which is arises to the crime and make the whole things didn't contribute at all, because the humans have the consent itself. The consent itself will cause the drastic rise of the crimes. And then in their worst case scenarios, they are likely their best case scenario, they are likely to taking the human as a subject. So this will certainly cause unreliable resources, unreliable testing, and unethical things. And my second argument is about what is benefit to the animals. For example, in their case, there has no, for example, the vaccines and the animal transplant. For example, the vaccine, right, rabies, tetanus, and infections, hepatitis virus is always work on the animals, and this is help the animals themselves. So don't say we are selfish for this. We are contribute to humans and contribute to the animals themselves. And the animal transplant, for example, like the potential to live the organ can be transplanted from one animal to another animal to keep themselves live. And the existing research is not only contribute to, it's a it's a wholesome thing with the assistance of the animal testing and for a safer environment for both animals and human beings. Thank you.
So, okay, I would like to thank the speaker for their remarks. So, ladies and gentlemen, and the honorable educators, I shall now call upon the government whip to rebut.
Am I audible?
Yes.
All right. I'm sorry, I won't be able to turn on my camera because my bandwidth is quite low. Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, opposition argues that simulation is unreliable and that animal testing has proven to be much more reliable compared to using computers and simulation to test. However, it has been proven that animal tests are extremely unreliable and that majority of animal tests do not react the same way as human trials do. And this is because animals, including chimpanzees, which are the animal that is the most similar in genetics compared to humans, react completely differently to most diseases and chemicals compared to humans. Simulation has been proven to be much more reliable compared to animal testing. Furthermore, if we simply rely on animal testing, what happens to the development of technology? There's no incentive for us to develop and technology to replace animal testing. In our world without animal testing, where we rely on simulation and human trials, there will be more incentive and urgency for us to create technology that can replace animal testing in a sustainable manner. In status quo, we're simply just becoming more complacent by continuing with the cruel practice of animal testing, which is simply archaic and pointless as it is unreliable. Op argues that Op talks about, yes, I'll take that.
Okay, so now you're talking about that. If we stop animal testing, it will create an urgency for technology advancements. But the motion for today is we regret. So this is in the past. We don't regret because what happened in the past is that it brought towards the advancements in the biological fields. And yes, maybe in the future there will be technological advancements. But is it present now? And is that an adequate solution right now? Please clarify.
Right. Okay. So we started animal testing as early as the 1940s, but it has been proven that animal testing is unreliable and it has made human trials in the past more risky. Development for drugs has become more unreliable because we relied on animal testing instead of using other devices. If we had started creating technology and using simulation earlier, we could have avoided the issues with data that is wrong or data that is inaccurate for humans because animals react differently to drugs and testing than humans do. So if we had created technology to use this earlier, then we would have definitely had more safer trials and perhaps even better development in our drugs in a faster manner. Okay, moving on. Opposition talks about human trafficking and that some humans used in human trials are sold through markets because they're poor people. But I feel like OP has ignored the fact that most human trials, in fact, pretty much every human trial, labs and scientists look for volunteers after it has been proven to be safe, so that what was I saying? instead, we do not look for humans by capturing them and buying them and selling them on the human trafficking market. In fact, most human trials have volunteers, such as the COVID vaccination trials. We had people who volunteered to take the vaccines, and it was tested safely. Human trials are consensual, and humans take that calculated risk that they might be harmed, and they take the risk to test, to be part of a trial so that they can test drugs and etc. However, animals are tested on without their consent. We cannot gain consent from animals, and there is no such thing as safe animal testing, because if you are testing on an animal, it is invasive. Yeah, I will take that.
Okay, so first of all, you stated that humans, they give consent before they are tested on, but they only give consent because it was proven to have no negative effect on the animals. Can you please elaborate? Can you
As I have said before, majority of animal trials have been proven to be unreliable, and later on in human trials it has been shown that it is actually a risky drug. So the risk still exists when human trials are taking place with animal testing. There is no animal trials have been proven to be inaccurate for humans because we react differently than animals do. And Ott talks about how instead of capturing animals from the wild, raising the animals in a lab would be a better response. But Gov feels that that is equally bad because it simply further just proves how humans just use animals for their benefit and deny them the basic right of existing in their natural world, in their natural habitats. How is raising animals in a lab any better than capturing an animal from the wild and bringing them into a lab simply to torture them? Because that's what animal testing is. It is archaic, and it is torture, and it is barbaric. With that, I'm proud to propose.
So, okay, I would like to thank the speaker for that speech. It is now to listen to the rebuttals of the opposition whip.
Hello, am I audible?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, a good evening I bid to the adjudicators and my fellow debaters. The motion for our debate today is, in light of the short film Save Ralph, this House regrets the use of animals in scientific research. And we, as the opposition, clearly object to the motion. And as the third speaker of the opposition side, I would address all the weaknesses in the arguments given by the government side and reaffirm my team's case and essentially prove how we have the better stand on this debate. So first of all, let's refer to the arguments brought up by the government side. The leader of the government side had stated that animal testing, it contributes to animal cruelty in scientific research, and it goes unnoticed. First of all, everybody knows that animal testing happens in scientific fields. When we were in Form 5, for biology students, for science stream students, we use the animals, we cut upon the animals to learn about their reproductive system. We learn about their organs, we learn about what's in them. And they also stated that it was unethical, and the practice tortures these animals and exposes them to danger. It's true. Yes, there are some negative effects. There are possible negative effects. And we, the opposition side, we don't deny these effects, but we want to state that we do not regret the animal testing. And this is because we do not support the cruelty. The cruelty is obviously not part of what we are supporting, but we support the usage of animals in an ethical usage way, according to the laws and regulations set by the country, is set by a few organizations. if there was a POI, was
Yeah, POI, please.
yeah, okay. I will take your POI.
Yeah, you can't claim to just support animal testing only when it's ethical, considering that in status quo, most of the animal testing done is unethical, and does actually harm the animals. You can't cherry pick which ones to defend.
Okay, yes, of course, we can't choose and pick which one to defend, but we must understand that those who are doing scientific research, they are trying in their best way to avoid the most cruelty towards the animals. They are trying their best to make sure that when they test these substances, that they are the peak point of their research, and that is only when they use animals as their test subjects. And then some animals don't even have a bad negative effects towards the antidotes given. But if we going on to the second government side, they say she stated that they would rather use computerized technology to run algorithms on the effects of these vaccines or whatever of these scientific researchers on the computer rather than on on animals, on living beings. First of all, computer models are still unreliable, and this is because just inputting data and produces consequences that is not similar to biological testing. Biological testing takes into consideration of unexpected biological factors, and it would not be right to assume that our experts are ignorant towards the alternatives, and they just proceed with animal testing for the fun of it. You can't assume that the experts in the scientific fields, they are ignorant of the fact that maybe they can use algorithm. So if the scientific experts are not implying this yet, there must be a faulty reason somewhere, a faulty factor somewhere that is insufficient, that the government side has not explained. Okay, there was a POI just now. I would take it now.
Yeah. So why do scientists have the incentive to keep these animals safe when they are the ones who breed them just to kill them and put them through these torture for the success of their careers and of their research?
Okay, again, please, government side, do not assume that we are doing this for our own ignorance, for our own achievements. It's not for them to keep their reputation. It's not just for their research. It's for the survival of humanity. If okay, let's give an example. Okay, COVID-19 vaccines. If they were not tested on animals beforehand, and they were just simply the doctors are like, okay, I think it's ready, we should just start injecting people, we should do like a trial of 20 people and let's see what happens. That would be a more evil, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And therefore we should not regret animal testing them on a little mice. Of course, we are not trying to say that humans are a superior being and that we are trying to dominate, to express our dominance over these animals and saying that they are not important. They are important. And that's why, according to what the second speaker of the opposition side stated, that it also benefits the animals. And I've also asked this towards the government side. We do provide animal testing also for the benefit of the animals. For example, animals suffering with rabies. We do animal testing before we give the antidote towards other animals, and they're proven successful. So I'm going to recap on what the arguments have been brought up by the opposition side, and you will see that we have a better hand on this debate, because the first speaker of the opposition side had stated that it provides progress in the medical field. So of course, yes, if we stop animal testing, then the technological field would have to push themselves. Yes, but that has not happened yet. Maybe somewhere in the future, but we do not regret what has been done before. So, and the second opposition side stated that there is no adequate solution, and with the government side stating that algorithms and all that virtual, it's not completely effective yet, is it? So to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. So you have to think what kind of egg do you want to break. Okay, so Ladies and gentlemen, in referring back to whether the motion should be supported or should be opposed, it is obvious that the opposition side has given a more clear and comprehensive insight on the case. The government side had brought up a few interesting facts, however, they were insufficient in providing their dominance to the issue. With that, we hope the floor would object to the motion today. Thank you. I rest my case.
Okay. All right, thank you. So now that we have heard all the three speakers from both teams, we shall take a short break of 1 minute. During this time, both the government and the opposition teams will prepare their reply speech. Okay, the time of 1 minute has ended. I shall now invite the opposition leader from the opposition team to deliver their reply speech.
Am I audible? Hello?
Yep. Yes.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we meet again in the reply speech arena. In today's reply speech, I will be providing two parts in my speech, which is firstly to fish out the flaws and the misunderstanding that has been occurring from the government bench, and also to provide the clashes that has occurred throughout today's debate. So firstly, the flaws and the misunderstandings are coming from side government, which is number one, they have largely misunderstood side opposition's stance on why and on the rights of animals and also the injustices that are happening against animals. We do acknowledge that there are injustices that are happening against animals, such as illegal deforestation and clearance of the forest in which animals are losing their habitat. We do acknowledge that these issues must be addressed as soon as possible, and these issues will not largely affect the survivability of the human being if we were to tackle these issues promptly. But however, if we were to completely stop animal testing, what will happen is that we will be impeding the progress of science and also the development of medical science in order for us to cure any predicament which might occur upon human being in the near future. Next, on some of the clashes that occurred throughout today's debate, which is number one on the issue of ethics, in which side government thinks that by stopping animal testing, we are able to put a stop on the whole debate on what is animal rights and how it is ethically immoral for us to test on animals. And they have completely disregarded the norms of science, which is to benefit humanity. And if we were to prioritize humanity's survival in order for us to move forward across millennium, we have to conduct animal testing, especially in this current situation where we don't have a feasible alternative yet for us to replace animal testings as a valid avenue for us to conduct scientific researches. Whereas on our side, we do acknowledge on the issue of ethics that there are several harms imposed on animals when it comes to testing them for scientific researches. However, we do believe there are several mitigating factors such as adherence to the law and also international guidelines, which reduces the harm and also reduces the pain that has been inflicted upon these animals throughout the testings. So in this side, on the issue of ethics, I believe that we have completely taken away by still continuing, by still able to prioritize the survival of humanity as compared to them. Secondly, on the issue of alternative, SAT government provided two alternatives today, which is a supercomputer simulation and also direct human trials by removing animal testings before we proceed to human trials. This alternative is largely uncertain and is very unreliable, and it does not provide immediate result in cases of we are facing a sudden calamity as we are having right now, which is COVID-19. And it does not provide the same avenue as what a biological testing would provide as compared to whatever alternatives that has been provided by said government. And if they are reliable, the main question here is that why are pharmaceutical companies or in the medical society are still not applying these alternatives yet? Because if they are still, if these alternatives are largely available, we should wonder why they are not using them yet. As in comparison to our alternative, we do believe that we should maintain the status quo, in which we do understand that in future probably there are several advances in the science which might render animal testing obsolete. But in terms of feasibility in the current situation that we are living right now, we do believe that animal testing is still justified, which comes to the next clash that happened in today's debate in on which side actually provides more progress in terms of scientific development. On their side, their alternatives and whatever that they have came up with does not actually provide any visible progress to science, because it is not yet proven and it is not largely accepted yet. Whereas on our side, we do believe that our premise today is much more progressive in terms of how it provides scientific development in developing new treatments and new technologies in the medical science for us to save humanity. Especially these visible proof can be seen throughout the decades, where we have provided many cures in terms of tuberculosis, polio, and many other dangerous diseases. And also currently we have the vaccines for COVID-19. With that, I think that side opposition has completely taken away today's debate, and I believe we should win the debate today. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I would like to thank you to the speaker for that speech. I shall now call upon the Deputy Prime Minister from the government team to deliver their reply speech.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, give me a second. All right, starting my speech in three, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The fatal flaw coming out of all three speakers in the opposition is the assumption that animal testing is the only thing that is keeping together the field of science and is the fundamental pillar behind the survival of humanity. Recognize that the only two matters of substance we got from the entire opposition bench was twofold. Number one, animal testing gives us progress in the medical field. And number two, we have to continue to use animals for the sake of our survival until we can get a feasible alternative. I'm going to answer 5 questions and just boil on to debate and show you why government took the win in this debate. The first question, what arguments have to be washed over? The arguments about which technologies are more reliable unfortunately have to be overlooked because neither side wanted to engage beyond that. We kept telling you that alternative technologies can exist and we don't have to rely on animal testing because animal testing can also be unreliable in that it does not reflect human physiology. But opposition keeps tampering on the fact that our simulations are also unreliable. So that argument, we have to say, is a wash. But regardless of that, I'm still going to talk to you about 4 other questions as to why we still take the debate. Second question, does an alternative exist? And this is the main crux of the opposition case, in that they don't want animal testing until we can find a feasible alternative. Number one, we've told you how an alternative can exist, and it's more likely for us to be able to develop an alternative when we've gotten rid of the reliance on animal testing. At a point in time in which we no longer use animal testing, or at a point in time retrospectively when animal testing never happened, it is far more likely that we would have developed other methods of like clinical trials or experimental trials for us to use instead. But secondly, and far more importantly, in a world where animal testing didn't exist and we had to rely on human trials, that's still marginally better because of 2 things. Humans can actually express consent, which means even in the worst case where these experiments can incur harm, these humans can at least understand the risks of the experiment and still opt into it based on them volunteering into it. Animals can't do that. We say we take that moral high ground. Third question, are past advancements in science and biology enough to justify animal testing? Recognize that also there's a bit of a tension in this case coming out of the opposition, because one hand, speakers saying that they want to justify it based on previous historical context and previous historical developments, but on the other hand, they're saying they want to continue to use it because of status quo. So we don't see whether or not they want to debate this retrospectively or in terms of prospect. But regardless, recognize that sure, we'll take them at their best case and we look back on the motion and say whether or not we regret the animal testing. We still tell you that, yeah, we can regret animal testing because regardless of all the advancements it gave us, it came at the expense of all of the harms it incurred. It came at the expense of abusing animals, and it came at the expense of desensitizing humans to animal welfare. This is where we go into the fourth and fifth question that they never responded to. Fourth question, is harming animals actually justified? Recognize that both sides agree that it's harmful to actually incur these kind of abuses on animals, but opposition decides to cherry pick a world in which they only want to defend animal testing when it's ethical and regulated. We told you how, number one, they can't simply cherry pick the models or the paradigms they want to defend. They have to acknowledge the fact that in status quo, a lot of these animal testings happen in a world where in a paradigm that's abusive and mistreating these animals. And secondly, B, even in their most objective case or the most opportunistic case where the regulations they want to impose somehow can protect these animals, at the end of the day, these animals are still being used for exploited for the sake of human benefit, and they've never responded to our analysis as to why that's not something justified. Fifth question, who actually respects the animal's right to exist? Recognize that we've told you structural analyses as to why we preserve animals' right to exist and why we no longer want to impose the idea of humans being superior to animals. We've told you that because animals are sentient, they automatically have a right to exist and they should not just be subjugated to our use as inferior beings. Number two, animals and humans are equal parts of the ecosystem. We can't just somehow assert our dominance over animals just because of that. And number three, and most importantly, they never consented to being subjected to this use anyway. So we think that even in the absolute best case, when they want to champion the use of animals for medical purposes, we said it's not justified because you can never obtain permission from these animals to begin with. We heard absolutely no response from opposition to these analyses, and they continued on the premise that human life is more valuable and that we should still continue to use animal testing for these reasons. The comparative on the end of the day is that if you want a world that actually preserves the integrity of these animals and takes into account the fact that we no longer have to rely on animals and that we can in fact exist as humans without animal testing, we won't suddenly go extinct without animal testing, side with government bench. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have now come to the end of this debate. So debaters are asked to remain in this room while waiting for the adjudicators to make a decision. So adjudicators are reminded to move to the adjudicators discussion room in the Cisco WebEx via the link provided. So with that, okay. All right, I think that's all for now. We'll wait until the verdict is out. So yeah. So how do you guys feeling? So how do you guys feel?
We feel good.
No. Does you guys get nervous? Usually the first debate, it was quite, how to say, quite nerve-wracking. At least it is for me.
Yeah. It's more of hungry and nervous because I haven't had my dinner yet. So it's obviously not
Yeah,
a
it's
good
always
sign. And oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have my food here.
Oh, good.
I did have my nasi ayam here. So yeah, right after the round, I will eat. But tomorrow will be a hectic day, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's
We
going
have
to be
4
long.
rounds, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Your edge just now, Matthew, it's a very good speaker actually. And yeah, I get so scared when I was debating with him. So one thing that he actually reminded us, this is one tip, so I try not to talk about ethics and moral because it is very much varied, I guess. Yeah. What is considered ethical is very much more towards cultural and time-based. When you look into where it was back then, it is ethically correct to have slaves. Back then, it was ethically correct. Ethics is when the moral value is accepted by a certain community, I guess. Yeah. Moral is more towards individual, so it's very much debatable.
So this tournament is actually organized by the Debating Society of UKM, or is it organized by some other society and you guys are just collaborating with them?
Actually, it is the ones that is actually handling it is the faculty, but the adjudicators is from the debate club from UCAM lah.
Oh, so it's a collaboration between the debating club and also the faculty lah. Okay.
Yeah. It's late though.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Tomorrow I
Right?
think the third round for you guys is going to be very much tiring lah. The third round or the fourth
Yeah.
round is going to be tiring.
I guess. Yeah. I guess it's normal. I would say, when we have so many rounds. I guess online debates are still fine. But when you have physical debates, back in those days, yeah, it has been more than 1 year. It'll be much tiring because you have to walk around and stuff. You'll be physically
Yeah.
exhausted. But I do miss that situation, the hectic, running to find your rooms and stuff.
True.
I
One thing that I like
Mhm.
about UKM debate, we have like the annual debate, is that we have fun round lah. I'm not, if I'm not mistaken, we don't have fun round. It's in this debate. It was a very much fun lah. It is more towards like release your stress. The rounds talk about like, is Cinderella like let off her shoes intentionally and all. So it was a very fun debate. Should Perry the Platypus be tired and all? So it's very fun lah.
For UKM, do you guys have like annual debate competitions within
Yes.
your university? And is it
Yeah,
like
we do.
how to say it, warmly welcome among the students, and the participations, are they quite high?
Usually the BMs is quite high. The English is not that it's not that well. Usually we will have like 3 or 4 college that did well, that we can see they will have a place. It was like a very huge margin between the
So it's
the
a competition between the faculties lah. Is it
uh,
competition between?
between the college
Mhm.
as of for now lah. As of for now, it is between the colleges.
Mm. I mean, in comparison to what we have in UUM, it's even for Malay debate, it's not warm. I mean, I wouldn't say the participations are quite low. I mean, for Malay debate, yes, they are obviously higher than English debate, but yeah, English debate is largely, I don't know, no one wants to enter it. Although we do have, many debaters, right? Sometimes they just don't want to join debate. I don't know why.
I mean,
Why
it's
is it so
fun.
quiet? Yeah, I mean, I enjoy debate just because I get to travel, but now you don't get to travel, so
I mean, the thing that I like about debate is that we question about things. We look into things in to side of the story, to side of the
yeah,
books lah. So it is very fun for me,
true.
because sometimes I feel like I would have a very strong opinion over something, but when I hear a good debate, I'll feel like, oh, maybe it is right.
Yeah.
Like I remember watching a debate about like marijuana should be legalized and some sort in the US. It was like back then. It was super good that I changed my opinion over that. So I feel like, yeah, maybe it should.
Change your opinion on whether you should have marijuana or not.
Yeah, you should legalize marijuana or not. I don't think I will have it. Should we legalize it? I mean, yeah, true.
Okay, I understand. Yep.
Yeah, it was a good debate. So I feel like it changes my opinion though. I mean, the problem arises.
Hello?
From
What just happened?
one thing. I think it just got disconnected. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
So if you, I think you can find the debate lah. It was like a good debate actually.
Wait, how old are you?
Oh my god, 24 because I took diploma before.
Oh, so you're currently in your second year?
Yeah, second year.
Second. Okay, we are pretty much the same. I mean, I'm younger, but yeah, we are in the second year. So what course are you taking?
For my diploma, I took medical lab. For degree, I took bioinformatics.
Sounds complicated.
Actually, bioinformatics is more towards programming and biology, so we take the both words lah.
Both sounds complicated. I mean, when they are different, I mean, when they are, separate, they sound complicated enough, and together, I mean, I don't really understand how, complicated it would be more. How about you guys
Yeah,
from
it is.
Sunway? Hello, are you guys there? I think they went missing, probably.
Don't worry lah. During the debate, you can be carried lah your face, but after debate, be friendly lah.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
So what course are you taking, and what year are you? Second year?
For me, I'm currently taking law.
Oh,
Mm-mm. Actually, both of my teammates are my course mates actually, and they are also my batch mates. We are all batch mates. Yeah.
you guys are having examinations or what right now?
For me, my semester has officially ended yesterday
Oh.
with my last test. I don't know for YY and Nino. Korang dah habis dah ke?
Dah.
Is Nino?
Aku habis
Huh?
sekali dengan kau.
Oh, test kemarin
I'm
dah?
taking free elective.
Oh, you
I'm
still have
taking free elective.
Hey,
I got
why?
calculus.
Wow, why got calculus?
Calculus,
I don't
maths.
know why she crazy.
Why your eyes?
Why you took
Yeah, I'm the
calculus
last
as your
paper for
free
calculus.
elective? You love maths so much, ah?
She wanted to be doctor. You have to know.
I
she
want to
wanted
be a
doctor.
doctor, but see, you can reject me. Tak ada lah.
No, luckily you don't take. Luckily you don't take UKM. I feel I kind of regret taking UKM because our thesis is in
You
Malay.
are live.
Oh.
Our thesis
Oh,
in Malay.
yeah.
We are fully Malay. So
Oh my
basically,
Okay.
especially for our subject, most research is in English, and then we have to translate. Very bad.
I mean, it's the same thing lah. I mean, even for law, right? Even if you
Yeah.
do study everything in English, but the practical usage is mostly in law. I mean, in Malay, especially kalau case yang, I mean, like high priority cases probably in English lah. But most, cases, practices are in Malay. So I think,
Magistrate court.
law students have to familiarize with the usage of Malay as well.
One thing about UKM is that we have our own writing style. We don't use APE, we don't use MLA. So it's we have our own style, Gaya UKM. So we can't use citation machine fully lah. We have, if you want to do reference, we took half of APA and then we have to edit it manually. So very much leceh lah, I guess.
I mean, that's cool though. I mean, one part, yes, you can't do stuff through citation machine. I mean, but it's cool, you have your own citation format.
Yeah.
So basically, all your assignments are in BM lah.
Most core subjects are in BM lah. Some subjects we learn in English. The lab are in Malay. The exam is in Malay. So it's very much confusing sometimes.
I mean, wait, if you guys have your assessments in Malay, why do they teach in English?
In English, yeah.
Wouldn't it be so troublesome?
Yeah.
I mean, it is quite troublesome. I mean, not to be stereotyping, right? But then even like in in other universities like UUM, can we have subjects like nationhood and stuff, right? Nationhood and ethics and whatnot, all those uni core subjects. But um, most of the time students can usually these subjects are taught in Malay, and most of the time Malay students will be having so much problem writing in Malay. Usually when I will be tasked with compiling the assignments and I look at their tata bahasa and I'm like, oh, this is simple tata bahasa, man. Like I mean like I do acknowledge that sometimes basic Malay is very important. At least the simple tata bahasa, right? But sometimes, yeah, it's just wow.
Yeah,
Okay, Shirin
I
is
mean,
taking bio.
it is good part actually, like doing it in Malay. I mean, if we are not doing it, then who will do it? And then if we have like a very groundbreaking researchers, like we do have one actually, but we have to write it in Malay. But then it's kind of like introducing our language to the eye of the world lah. That is one of the biggest
That's
attraction.
yeah. Hi, Shireen.
And
Hello.
one more thing, UKM's punya Dean list is 3.60, 3.64 or 65, something like that.
That's not
Very
much
different
different
from
from
ours.
ours.
Oh,
Ah,
okay.
ours is
So,
3.67.
oh, I think it's quite the same actually. I think you guys need to have elective, I guess, and the elective is how to say included in your GPA too, is it?
Oh, wait. I don't understand. What?
If
Elective?
other course they have elective.
Yes,
Eh,
free elective.
and free elective.
Free elective and co-care also must also included.
Oh, yeah, same lah.
Co-care
Wait.
will
How much is the Dean list minimum for other universities? I thought they're pretty much the same.
No, UITM's is
Sunway,
3.5.
Sunway.
Okay.
Yeah, UITM is 3.5. I think like some university, most university have 3.5 lah. So
Oh,
If
that's so
Sunway, how
lucky
much?
of them.
Sunway, how much?
Do you guys have Dean's List awards as well
Sorry, what?
in
Sorry,
Sunway?
what?
Do you guys have Dean's List awards as well in Sunway?
We have merit scholarships.
Wait. Scholarships.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like merit
So,
scholarships. But Dean's List, I don't know if it's a scholarship, but like you just get on the list, I think. But I'm still in my first year, so I still don't know.
oh, you're on your first year. Okay. So every one of you guys are in your first year.
I'm in my first year, and my Wenjun and Gitanjali are A levels.
Oh, okay. A levels. Okay. Basically, you guys are so much younger, but so much fearsome. Than
Oh lah, like
you guys are so much fierce.
they are very
Intimidating.
good in speaking.
So how do you guys actually train in Sunway? I mean, I always
Yeah.
talk to a lot of public university debate clubs, but I rarely get to talk with private universities debate club members. So how do you
We
guys actually train?
we just have training every Wednesday and Thursday, and then they just post it in the WhatsApp group who can come. And then kalau cukup orang debate lah, kalau tidak, janganlah. That's basically how we train, just on a registration basis. Who can come, come.
Oh,
You
I
like
see.
have hire a coach or hire coach?
Yeah, do you
We,
guys have coaches?
we used to, like before Mr. Corona, but now it's just like within ourselves only.
How about UKM?
what? Come again?
Do you guys have coaches for your debate club?
Yes, usually our seniors lah.
Seniors as in they are still studying or they have graduated?
Mostly still studying, and sometimes we do have alumni lah. We take alumni too. Depends on the alumni if they are available, some sort.
Yeah, sadly for us, right? We do had seniors, but yeah, our seniors already graduated, and yeah, they don't have much time to actually train us and stuff. they are also busy with their internships and stuff. So most of the time it's just self training. Itu pun sakit-sakit juga nak training. I mean, I mean,
All right. Okay, guys, the ads are is back. So yeah, I
Okay.
think we'll continue. Sorry to cut it off. I think
Okay.
yeah. Okay. Wait. All right. So the educators will now hand over the results of the debate, after which they shall deliberate they will deliberate on the best speaker. So the educators will announce the result of the winning team.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So, welcome back. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate both teams for a job well done for round one. I can safely say this was a close debate. It was, in terms of debate quality, definitely above average. So, I would like to congratulate both teams for that. Well done. So, as the saying goes, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be someone who doesn't win, not necessarily lost. So, to get that out of the way first, I will start off with delivering the verdict and also the best speaker for this round. And then I'll move on to giving the overall adjudication, like the oral adjudication on why the verdict went that way. Okay, so for today's motion on in light of self-rep, this house regrets animal testing for scientific purposes. So the motion goes to side government. All right, so congratulations to side government, and the best speaker is also from side government, which is the government's second speaker, Deputy Prime Minister. So congratulations as well. So now that the verdict is out, so why did it go to this way? All right, so at the end of the day, right, when we look at this motion, we're essentially talking about two main things. One is we're talking about animal testing, whether it's ethical, whether it's legal or not, we're talking about animal testing. And the second one is we're talking about the scientific purpose that this animal testing supposedly has. All right. So at the end of the day, the debate boils down to a few main clashes, a few key arguments that determine who won each side. So let's start off with the ethical battle. All right. So why ethical battle is important? Because it goes off from the very first government speaker saying that it is ethically immoral to test on animals, with the arguments being it as torture, it is never safe, and it is harmful. So ethically immoral comes out off the bat from side government, and it goes on to cite government's second speaker also talking about it being ethically immoral. And the engagement also came from side opposition, saying that from opposition first speaker, it was said that it is ethically immoral to also stop testing, and that they should balance the weight of humans versus animals, and that there are methods taken to reduce suffering to mitigate the pain. So that in itself is a great argument, because you say that there are methods taken to reduce the suffering to mitigate the pain, but then side government came back with the idea of consent, in a sense that because in this argument, in this whole context of animal testing, we also talk about human testing. So it goes from animal testing to human testing before it is mass produced for the public. So human testing is also in the way. And when we compare human testing with animal testing, the one key factor that is missing in animal testing is consent. So when you talk about ethics, when you bring in the notion of ethics, consent is a very important thing. So now this thing just changes the entire picture, because one is you have humans who are consenting to put themselves in potentially harm's way for the sake of testing out medicine or testing out vaccines, but you have animals who have no way of admitting consent or giving consent, but are still being subjected to experiments anyways. So that is important, because when it comes down to the ethical battle, when it comes down to consent, and from one side that can volunteer and one more side which is incapable of consenting and incapable of volunteering, so the argument will definitely go to the side that can show that consent was given in the sense of testing. So that's how government won the first battle in terms of ethicals. So it was close before, until the notion of consent came up, because consent is very much relevant with ethics, and when that comes up, it's equally important to pay attention to it. It cannot simply be disregarded. So you can't say that animals are not sentient or they're not sapient in the sense that they cannot give consent, but humans can. So if humans can give consent and we choose not to experiment on them if they don't, what differentiates that from animals? So that is a very important notion that could have been explored more but wasn't. However, the idea of consent itself was a very overpowering argument, so which is why side government wins that. So moving on to the other one, which is the justification of harming. So right off the bat, harming in this sense, you can see both ways. One is you're seeing animals that are being harmed for nothing, or the other one is seeing animals that are being harmed for the greater good. And in a sense that in this case, the greater good is that humanity will somehow benefit from it moving forward. So opposition, the one thing off the bat that side government has highlighted is that when opposition talks about the justification of harming animals, they seem to only cherry pick in their words and only talk about the ones that are ethical and regulated, which is true. So when it comes down to this, the one thing that you should do is when you're talking about justification, it is important to acknowledge that fault also occurs on your side. You cannot just paint the picture that there is ethical researches going on, that there is regulated ones going on, and that alone is justification enough to harm animals. You need to acknowledge, because side government is already pushing the notion that there are animals being mistreated, there are animals that are beyond oversight, that are undergoing unethical research. So you must also address this as well. And in your case, you must show how the weight is in your side, in a sense that how the ethical or regulated ones far outweigh the unethical ones. That could have been a battle that you could win if you could justify to us how the ethical and the regulated ones have far more benefits and is far more controlled compared to the unethical ones that are going rampant. So that could have been highlighted, but given that it wasn't, so we cannot credit that. So in the end of the day, is harming justified? We have to look back on it. As we see, one thing that has been brought up as well is that humans and animals are basically the same here. Because when we are talking about animal testing, we also bring in the fact that humans are also being tested on. But humans are being tested on after animals are tested. So in a sense that before we can release medication or before we can release anything to the public, it needs to go through human testing. That means the humans are the deciding factors here, not the animals. So if the animals, and when we test animals, it's wise to note that we don't test one or two, we test them massively. So when animals and humans are put side by side, there comes the entire argument of whose life is better or whose life has more value. So that argument was won by side government because they kept saying that the consent part is important and that animals, they go through all these harmful effects. To what extent? To an extent that at the end of the day, humans will also be tested on. To the end of the day, even if animals die, that before that medicine or before that product can be put out in public, it needs to go through humans as well. So humans in these cases are still an integral part of testing. So why should animal testing be given so much emphasis when humans are also being tested on? Which brings to the next argument, saying that so side opposition said that animal testing should not be regretted or should be proceeded until there is a better method that comes up. In a sense that until there is an alternative to animal testing, we should proceed with animal testing. Now, side government came off the very bat saying that there are simulations that can be used, there are algorithms that can be used to take over animal testing where data is inputted and we can come up with a simulation model. So this was proposed as an alternative because side opposition said that there was no alternative as of yet. So side government came up with an alternative, only for side opposition to say that the alternative was unreliable as well. So here is basically where both sides are at loggerheads, because you got one side saying that animal testing is unreliable because animals have different reactions compared to humans, and you have another side saying that the simulations which we propose as alternatives are unreliable because at the end of the day, it's just raw data. It does not come down to the end of like, whether does the raw data actually correspond to how it would affect humans or how it would affect people in the real life setting. So that was a bit of a loggerhead. So in terms of reliability, we leave it as it is because both sides are claiming that it is unreliable and both sides did not fully dwell in to full arguments to show how your side has a better motion. Because when side government came up and said about simulations, side opposition rightfully so stated that simulations cannot take over biological testing, in a sense that biological testing will yield more realistic results compared to simulations because algorithms, as you know, are programmed to function a certain way, data input, data output. But when it comes down to human testing, when it comes down to biological testing, there is no real control of it. The way you affect the organism is clearly seen. Whether you put in a vaccine, there is no clear outcome, whether it's going to be okay or not okay. There might be side effects. There's a lot of things that can develop in the middle. So because of that, we cannot credit any side for reliability because both of it at the end of the day cancels off each other in terms of arguments. So then it comes down to in terms of progress in science. So there was actually a very good argument that came out by side government but came out a bit too late which is why we cannot credit it. So the argument on the incentive to create technology to replace animal testing. So that is actually a good argument in a sense that if people keep dwelling on animal testing, then what is the real incentive for people to do better, to create technology that will make animal testing a thing of the past? So this in itself is a good argument. Unfortunately, this argument came out in the government third speech. So as good as an argument it is, we cannot credit it because prior to the government third speaker, they only talked about simulations and the fact that they are being used to create a simulation, to create a model, but not specifically said on how it is an incentive that will help technology become better to ultimately replace animal testing. So that was a good point, but unfortunately, given that it came out a bit too late in the debate, we cannot credit that. So when it comes to the first speaker, all right, so to go through every speaker just on a brief glance. So government one, your characterizations were good. There were the backgrounds on Safe Ralph that was very much needed. So the characterization was given, the status quo was given, and the entire idea of how it is ethically immoral was brought in, and also the human trials. So the one thing that was left hanging is saying that maybe instead of animal trials, we should do human trials because animal trials are not 100% accurate. So one thing that could have been done better was to maybe dwell deeper on it, to explain more, because one more critical weakness I would see on side opposition is that a lot of your substantives did not hit its full potential. So for instance, when we go to opposition 2, saying that animals having a shorter lifespan, therefore they can be used for research, we need more on it. So what is the significance of that shorter lifespan in comparison with humans? Like if you want to weigh the life of a human life with the life of an animal life, will the lifespan play any significant role in tipping the scale? So that is very important. So the fact that animals have shorter lifespans than humans and how they are being used as a justification for research can be used as a solid argument if it was given in more detail. And the one solid argument that we can credit, or one of the solid arguments that we can credit side opposition, is that saying animals are being biologically same, therefore simulations cannot emulate realistic results, which is correct. Animals are living beings, and if you're going to administer medicine to living beings, we obviously need to see how they affect living beings. However, side government did propose a mechanism. They proposed a mechanism when side opposition stated that at the current status quo that there are no methods that can overtake or can be used to replace animal testing. But side government said that we have simulations that will not 100% solve the problem, but paves the way to slowly replace animal testing. So they did propose a alternative, and that alternative is very important because until the end, the only argument that went back on it was unreliability, which was unreliability was thrown by both sides because side government is saying that animal testing is unreliable 100%. Side opposition comes up to say that the simulations are unreliable 100%. So at the end of the day, both of these arguments cancel out each other, but it is also worth noticing that side government did propose a manner in a sense that it is not just empty talk saying that the only method we have right now is animal testing. We have no other methods apart from animal testing. While in reality, we do. We have simulations. It might not 100% solve the problem, but in itself, it is still a method and a way to solve the problem in the long run. So I believe that side opposition and side government both brought up very solid arguments. However, it came down at the end of the day to the key clashes of who won the ethical battle, who won the justification of actually harming animals, and basically side government has managed to show us a complete picture compared to side opposition, because side opposition, although the engagement was very good, but you also need to engage on every single aspect. You cannot choose a perfect world scenario and engage solely on that, because that was what side government managed to identify and managed to attack you on, saying that you were only cherry picking and talking about ethical researchers and researchers that have regulations, that have legislature overlooking it. What about those that are rampant, those that are going on where animals are being needlessly tortured for cosmetic purposes, as mentioned by one of the government speaker, I believe the second government speaker, where the whole part of cosmetic testing was overlooked, because cosmetic testing at the end of the day is also scientific. It is to check and see how cosmetics will have an adverse effect on human beings. So before human beings can be directly tested upon, they obviously have to go through animals. So cosmetic testing is a valid point because it does contribute to scientific research. So at the end of the day, the arguments of ethical battle, the arguments of is animal testing the only way as stated in the status quo, and also the argument on is harming the animals justified in a sense to reach the greater good at the end of the day. Because if it was justified, that means we do not have any other current methods that can sustain the end goal, which is to push forward science and push forward humanity in science. But given that side government has given us alternatives, then it is no longer the case. All right. So that is why I gave the verdict to side government. So I think in terms of a personal feedback, if you would like to ask personal feedback, you could probably approach me sometime, maybe not tonight because I'm pretty sure everyone's burnt out, maybe sometime tomorrow morning in between rounds. If you'd like to obtain your personal feedback, you can definitely do so. You can just come into contact with me and I will hand you your personal feedbacks. But all in all, no matter what the results were, this was a close debate. The ending was the only thing that differentiated the winner from the one that didn't win. Margins were extremely close. So I would like to once again say congratulations to both teams. It was a very good debate for a first round, and I hope that you maintain this momentum going into day 2 of the competition. And yeah, I would like to wish you all the best in your further rounds. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Congratulations to the winning team and congratulations to the best speaker. So congratulations to everyone. And for the non-winning team, I really hope you guys did well in the next round, and I wish you guys good luck. So with that, the House of Parliament is adjourned. So thank you. I'll end the live now.